Welcome to The Explainer. So have you ever looked at a massive, seemingly unsolvable global problem and just thought, man, the system is totally broken? Well, today we're exploring the absolutely radical mindset of Nobel Laureate Muhammad Yunus. He's known around the world as the banker to the poor, and he solves these massive, deeply entrenched problems by basically doing the exact opposite of conventional wisdom. We're going to map out exactly how he pulls this off. Which brings us to this really fascinating core question. What if the so-called experts actually have it all backward? Think about it. When Yunus returned to his native Bangladesh after earning his PhD in the US, he was just surrounded by extreme poverty. But instead of throwing his hands up in despair, he realized something huge. Relying on prepackaged solutions from textbooks and global experts, that rarely works. He found that the real fix usually lies in getting on the ground, observing the reality, and completely flipping the established rules on their head.
And honestly, this quote right here captures his entire philosophy perfectly. I look at the problem, I try to figure out the solution on my own in my own way. While he was teaching at a university, he literally saw villagers next door being ruthlessly exploited by loan sharks. I mean, it's an age-old problem, right? But he didn't form a committee, he didn't wait for institutions to act or, beg the government for a grant. No, he just walked right over and started lending tiny amounts of money out of his own pocket to break their cycle of debt. He realized, hey, if I lend them the money, the loan sharks lose the power instantly. It was really that simple.
So let's get into Section 1, reversing the banking system. Let's look at how he took the traditional financial framework and turned literally every single rule completely upside down to create what we now call microcredit.
The sheer absurdity of the status quo becomes super obvious when you stack it against his creation, Grameen Bank. Yunus built his policies by looking at what conventional banks did and just doing the exact reverse. Think about it. Conventional banks lend to the rich, Grameen lends to the absolute poorest. Banks cater to men, Grameen focuses on women. Banks demand collateral and piles of complicated legal documents just to prove you're wealthy enough to get the money in the first place. Grameen, they threw out collateral entirely. They operate purely on trust, making them literally the only lawyer-free bank in the world.
And this beautifully illustrates the real-world impact of those reversed rules. Just look at this breakdown. 97% of Grameen Bank's borrowers are destitute women. But wait, here is the absolute craziest part. These women don't just get the loans. They actually own the bank. They sit on the board of directors and decide its policies. It's a financial institution fundamentally owned and governed by the very poor women it serves. How cool is that?
The scale of this reversal is just staggering. Because Yunus believed that people shouldn't go to the bank, but rather the bank should go to the people, Grameen now serves over 8.5 million borrowers. 8.5 million! They meet with these borrowers every single week across 80,000 remote villages in Bangladesh. And get this, even after 40 years, they do not have a single branch located in a city center.
But Yunus also issues a really stark warning here, and it's something we absolutely need to pay attention to. He points out that conventional banking is largely responsible for a highly dangerous, unsustainable concentration of wealth, where 99% of the world's wealth is currently owned by just 1% of the population. He throws down a major challenge for us, asking how we intend to reverse this before it gets even worse. Because, let's face it, the system as it stands is mathematically designed to funnel money to those who already have it.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the social business model. Because if you can completely reverse the banking system, what happens when you apply that same inverted thinking to capitalism itself? What happens when you reverse the core objective of a business?
He defines this whole new paradigm as a social business. Now, a conventional business is driven by one main rule, right? Making a personal profit? Well, Yunus threw that rule right out the window. A social business is a non-dividend company, meaning you don't take any personal profit out of it. Instead, the entire company, every single dollar it generates, is strictly devoted to solving human problems, things like health, education, and sanitation.
Check this out. Yunus decided to tackle the lack of electricity in rural Bangladesh by starting a solar energy social business. And he did this with zero expertise in solar energy. The experts literally told him it wouldn't work in Bangladesh. And honestly, at first it was incredibly tough. They only sold maybe 4 or 5 systems a month. But because the business was focused entirely on the mission, rather than extracting rapid profits, they stuck with it. Eventually, they hit a peak of selling 1,000 systems in a single day. Today, that social business sparked a movement that powers 4 million homes, creating the largest off-grid solar system in the world.
And this model actually attracts massive global players. He even partnered with Intel to create a high-tech bangle, basically a beautiful ornament worn by pregnant women in rural villages.
Since indoor air pollution from cooking fires is a massive cause of maternal death, this bangle actually detects dangerous air quality and issues voice commands to evacuate. Plus, it tracks pregnancy symptoms and provides emergency communication. It perfectly proves that cutting-edge tech can be successfully repurposed strictly for social impact, without needing a massive profit margin.
That brings us to Section 3, Entrepreneurs, Not Job Seekers. This is his third radical reversal, and it specifically targets the education system, human ambition, and our deeply ingrained assumptions about careers.
So Grameen Bank made it a strict policy to encourage borrower families to educate their kids, and it was a massive success, achieving 100% school enrollment. Thousands of these young people went on to earn higher education degrees, including masters and PhDs. But ironically, this created a brand new problem. These highly educated graduates were just left sitting idle, complaining bitterly to Yunus that there were no jobs for them.
And Yunus, he confronted these unemployed graduates with this incredibly blunt, bold question: who asked you to have a job? Seriously, he challenged them, asking if their books or their teachers somehow forced them to get a job. He argues that unemployment is a totally artificial concept. As he puts it, when humans first lived in caves, they weren't exactly sending out job applications from cave number 5 to cave number 10, right? No, they were natural problem solvers.
He passionately believes this: human beings are packed with unlimited creative capacity. He argues that our current education system fundamentally points us in the wrong direction, basically churning us into tiny little job seekers. In his view, taking a repetitive job actually sacrifices your innate, unlimited creativity. We are all naturally born as problem-solving entrepreneurs, not just workers waiting around to be hired by someone else.
To actively break this cycle and empower these young folks, Yunus created a social business fund. The process here is beautifully simple. First, a young person pitches an idea. Then, the fund provides all the necessary capital to start a joint venture. Next, the entrepreneur does the hard work and grows the business. Once it's successful, they simply return the original investment amount. No interest, no extracted profits for the fund. And finally, the entrepreneur is completely independent, totally free to chart their own course.
And this perfectly illustrates his core argument to those young people. Just look at this ultimate contrast. If their illiterate village mothers could build successful, independent businesses starting with a measly $20 or $30 loan from Grameen Bank, then highly educated graduates with master's degrees and PhDs have absolutely no excuse to sit idle and call themselves unemployed. The problem isn't a lack of jobs, it's a lack of utilizing their own creative capacity.
Now let's head into Section 4, the 3 Zeros vision. Let's see how all of these paradigm shifts build toward the ultimate destination of Yunus's philosophy, his literal blueprint for our future.
Yunus actually argues that without defining the purpose of your life, everything else becomes immaterial. He distills his entire life's mission down to 3 incredibly monumental, yet he insists, totally achievable goals, the 3 zeros. Step 1, eliminating poverty entirely. Step 2, eradicating unemployment by recognizing everyone as an entrepreneur. And Step 3, achieving 0 net carbon emissions worldwide. His vision regarding that first zero is so absolute, so unwavering, that he genuinely works every single day toward a future where poverty simply doesn't exist anymore, like at all. Instead, he envisions that our descendants will literally have to buy a ticket and visit a poverty museum just to understand what the concept even used to be like.
Ultimately, Yunus argues that the old civilization we're living in right now just cannot solve our problems because its very formulations are fundamentally flawed. To actually achieve these 3 zeros, we have to recognize that our current system is built on personal selfishness. We have to actively abandon that greed-driven model and consciously design a totally new civilization, one that's rooted entirely in human values.
So as you walk away from this explainer today, I want you to think about Muhammad Yunus stepping out into that village to hand his own money to those people trapped by loan sharks. He didn't ask for permission, right? He just reversed the rules. So the profound challenge for you right now is this: what broken system in your world are you just accepting? Will you remain a tiny job seeker waiting around for instructions, or will you unleash your unlimited creative capacity, reverse the paradigm, and build something entirely new? Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.